Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the January 10th, 2022 meeting of the Maplewood Economic Development Authority. And I'd like to have Ms. Sint call the roll, please.
Certainly. Commissioner Abrams.
Here.
Commissioner Cave.
Here.
Commissioner Villavicencio.
Here.
Commissioner Juniman.
Here.
President Knudsen.
Here. Thank you. Could we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved by Abrams. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Abrams, seconded by Commissioner Cave. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll go in this order. Commissioner Cave, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Villavicencio?
Aye.
Commissioner Juniman?
Aye.
Commissioner Abrams?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. We have a motion to approve the minutes of December 13th, 2021 Economic Development Authority.
So moved. Second.
I didn't hear that first. Who moved that?
Abrams, sorry.
Okay. And second, moved by Commissioner Abrams, second by Commissioner Cave. Is that correct?
Yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's go in order. Commissioner Cave,
Aye.
Commissioner Villavicencio,
Aye.
Commissioner Juniman,
Aye.
Commissioner Abrams,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you. We have no public hearing tonight, no unfinished business. We have in our new business, Assistant Executive Director, Mr. Thompson, I believe, has the floor. The first item is the election of officers. I see that Assistant Executive Director Thompson will be conducting that activity. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, President Knudsen. So each year, the Economic Development Authority appoints its officers as outlined in the bylaws for the EDA. So there are 5 officer positions for the EDA: the president, the vice president, the treasurer, and those in the past years have been held by members, commissioners of the EDA. And then there's also the secretary position and the assistant treasurer position, and those have been over the years traditionally held by the city clerk, Tint, and then the finance director, Paul Seth, respectively, for those 2 positions. So we're just looking for the EDA to make motions and approval of the officers for 2022 for the entire year, and those will be effective until the first meeting in 2023. And the recommended officers and motions are included in your staff report.
Thank you.
You.
I would like
Thank
to
you.
move Commissioner Knudsen as the president of the Maplewood EDA. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Abrams, seconded by, I didn't hear the second one. Was that Commissioner Juniman?
Yes, sir. Yep.
That President Knudsen continue as the president. Is there a second? Or is there any further discussion? Those in favor, Commissioner Cave,
Yes, President Knudsen.
Commissioner Villavicencio,
Aye.
Commissioner Juniman,
Aye.
Commissioner Abrams,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. I could not get the campaign signs into the frozen turf, so I do appreciate your support. Continue, Mr. Thompson, and the other positions.
I would nominate Commissioner Juniman as our vice president of the Maplewood EDA.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Abrams, seconded by Commissioner Cave. Any further discussion? Let's go for the vote. Commissioner Cave, Commissioner Cave? Let's move on. Commissioner Villavicencio,
Aye.
Commissioner Juniman,
Aye, I guess.
Commissioner Abrams,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. The
Sorry,
motion
Bill.
carries.
President Knutson, I'm sorry, I was stuck. I don't know what happened, but I vote aye.
Thank you. So now we have the position of treasurer.
I would nominate Commissioner Cave.
Second.
A move by Commissioner Abrams, seconded by Commissioner Juniman. Any discussion? If not, let's call for the vote. Commissioner Cave,
Aye.
Commissioner Villavicencio,
Aye.
Commissioner Juniman,
Aye.
Commissioner Abrams,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Next, we have the position of treasurer.
No.
Nope.
Secretary.
Secretary, I'm sorry.
I I nominate as secretary, Andrea Sent.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Juniman, seconded by Commissioner Cave. Any discussion? All right, let's call for the vote. Commissioner Cave,
Aye.
Commissioner Villavicencio,
Aye.
Commissioner Juniman,
Aye.
Commissioner Abrams,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Now we have assistant treasurer.
I nominate as assistant treasurer, Ellie Paulseth.
Second.
Nomination by Commissioner Juniman, seconded by Commissioner Cave. Is there any further
Abram.
discussion? Oh,
Abrams
Abram?
seconded it. Yeah.
oh. Thank you. Let's call for the vote. Commissioner Cave,
Aye.
Commissioner Villavicencio,
Aye.
Commissioner Juniman,
Aye.
Commissioner Abrams,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Well, look forward to next year. Lots of exciting stuff. And without any further ado, let's get on to the new business. Again, the Gladstone update. Assistant Executive Director Thompson, you've got the presentation here.
Thank you, Mr. President. And can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So President and Commissioners, as you may recall, then back in the most recent strategic planning we've done for the Economic Development Authority, the Gladstone neighborhood and kind of implementation of the Gladstone neighborhood plan is when identified as one of the high priorities for the Economic Development Authority and for the work of the council and economic development staff at the city. So, and one of the kind of implementation strategies that was discussed in that strategic planning was really hosting a developers forum. And we've opted to kind of do that over the last couple of years via kind of individual meetings with developers, mostly just given kind of that's what they prefer, but also kind of the pandemic shifted our strategy in doing that. So we wanted to come and kind of do a comprehensive update of all of the pending developments in the Gladstone area, give you an update of where we're at with those, and then certainly answer any questions or take any direction that the EDA has pertaining to the implementation of the Gladstone development plans. So to jump in, I just put together this development map, and this is summarizing the 4 sites that we'll talk about tonight. Site A is what we commonly refer to as the Maplewood Marine development, and that's just west of the Gladstone Savannah. Site B is the current Hmong Funeral Home, and that's at the southeast corner of Frost and English. And then Site C is the Gladstone House, and Site D being the former Moose Lodge at the northeast corner of Frost and English. And I've just colored them on the map. The kind of orange color represents privately owned properties, and then the red highlighted properties represent properties that the EDA or the city owns as part of its land acquisition strategy to accelerate development in this neighborhood. So I'll kind of walk through each of these 4 sites and give you an update on where we're at with each of them. So first I wanted to talk about the Maplewood Marine site. As I mentioned, this is on the south side of Frost Avenue, just west of the Gladstone Savannah. There is a developer that has secured purchase agreements. That's Reuter Walton Development. They have a purchase agreement with Maplewood Marine itself. That's a privately owned property. They have that under contract. And then they have a purchase agreement with the city that we approved in I think it was June of last year, for the purchase of the land we own directly adjacent to Maplewood Marine. So the idea is those sites would be combined, and for one development site moving forward. There's really 2 applications. There's really two potential projects that could be constructed out there. If you recall, Reuter Walton first wanted to explore a tax credit project through the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency's kind of super RFP for obtaining federal tax credits, and that would be for a 65-unit affordable housing project. The update on that is typically those tax credits get awarded generally at the end of November of each year. There's kind of an annual process where the allocation happens at the end of November. For various reasons, that has been delayed. And so there has been some cuts, but not the final allocations determined yet. And this project is still in the pool for potential tax credits. So they're still pending a hearing on the final decision on that. If you recall, though, this is the purchase agreement where there's a fairly long due diligence period, because if they are unsuccessful in obtaining credits in last year's process, they would then kind of pivot or change to a market rate housing project on this site. And so since the delay in tax credits, they've actually started to do some of the preliminary legwork on the market rate project, starting the look at whether a redevelopment TIF district would be qualified for on the site, and starting very preliminary discussions of what that plan could look like. So that's where they're at. We expect to hear soon on that final allocation, and we'll certainly keep you updated if they're successful with the tax credits and that project's moving forward, or if they're not, and they're going to transition to that market rate project. Anyway, we are covered under the purchase agreement already. That is good through the end of November of this year, and so there isn't any action needed for this development in that existing purchase agreement and development agreement that we have with them. The second site, Site B, is the Hmong Funeral Home, and that, as you recall, they've actually been going and applying for tax credits for a number of years, at least in 2019, 2020, and then also in 2021. This is a private development in the sense that there's no land that we're selling for this development. So it's all on privately owned property. They are in the same position as Reuter Walton, is that they are still waiting to hear on whether they're being allocated tax credits or not. So that's the quick update on the Site B development of the funeral home. The third update for Site C is a little bit more involved. As you recall, it's a little bit more complex because the city owns the Gladstone house on the north side of Frost, but we also own a vacant a parking lot on the south side of Frost Avenue that's adjacent to the Philippine Center of Minnesota. And this would require the land swap with the Philippine Center to have a consolidated development site on the north side of Frost. We had a purchase agreement with MWF Properties for an affordable housing project on that consolidated development site. They also applied for tax credits, and we do know that they were not successful. So they were not awarded tax credits in 2021. So they have had discussions with us, with staff, about extending that purchase agreement, but we wanted to come and give you an update and potential next steps. And so we did let that purchase agreement expire in December of last year, December of 2021. But they're certainly still interested in the site. And so like I said, there's still continued interest in a similar development, and are interested in entering into a purchase agreement, under the general same terms as before, but that would essentially extend for the entire duration of 2022 because they'd be going through the tax credit process this year. We've also been meeting as part of our kind of developer meetings with Beacon Interfaith Housing, and they're a nonprofit housing developer in the Twin Cities area. They do a number of projects each year. Their model is around supportive housing projects, and they've identified the East Metro and certainly Maplewood as an area that they're interested in doing a development and submitting for a tax credit application in 2022. They've looked at a number of development sites actually in Maplewood, and they really like the Gladstone neighborhood. They like the area, the amenities, and frankly, it scores really well. There's a strong component of the tax credit application that has to do with the location of the project. And the Gladstone neighborhood of Maplewood is actually our highest scoring neighborhood. Given the various inputs that go into that formula, it scores in the low 20s, which is a high geographic score for tax credit applications. Beacon has also been interested in conversations with Ramsey County about their HRA programs and the timeline for launching that. And so they're interested in pursuing both an application of Ramsey County HRA, but also a Minnesota housing tax credit application. And so we have discussed this site with them. And I'll talk a little bit about another site they're interested in the neighborhood, but they're potentially interested in this site as well. So what we're recommending, staff is recommending to do for site C, given that there may be a couple developers, if not more, interested in it, is to go through a solicitation of offers process. And if you'll recall, this is we did this for the exact same process for the London Lane property before we entered into that purchase agreement, because there were like 3 developers that were interested at the time. We like this as opposed to a big, drawn out RFP, because it's a pretty condensed process that kind of can be done in a fairly quick timeline. I'll talk a little bit about why that's important just a little bit. So we put a draft in the packet for the EDA to review, and we're certainly receptive to any feedback or comments you have on that. But we issue that out to the development community, and certainly to the developers that we've been talking to about these properties. And then they would need to submit, as part of the solicitation, an offer, and that would include a submission of who the the team is, what the proposed project is, and then it gets into some of the important pieces of the financial components, like what would the terms of the purchase agreement be, what would the terms of a purchase be in a letter of intent, including their financial pro forma, and also a portfolio of past projects. And then we've included in the solicitation these evaluation criteria, and these are intended to be ranked kind of from most important to less important. And so the way we would review any offers that come in was first consistency with the comp plan, the Gladstone master plan, and also the Rush Line Purple Line investment. The second would be the ability of the developer to perform, and there's a number of ways we look at that. The third, we would look at purchase price. Fourth would be closing date. Fifth would be whether they are providing affordable housing that's consistent with our housing plan and our comp plan. And then lastly, the amount and length of any tax increment financing that's requested by the developer. And then we have a fairly aggressive timeline on this. And the reason is, well, we want development to happen, and we want to be able to move and get deals with developers that are interested. That's one reason. The second is that Ramsey County has indicated that their HRA programs for new multifamily units are likely to be released in the first quarter of this year. And so in order to apply for that, a developer will likely need some sort of land control or proof that they have land control. So we're trying to kind of put our timeline knowing about the Ramsey County timeline as well. So here's the rough timeline. We'd issue it this week if we get the direction to do so. We'd have a couple of weeks for them to submit their offers, and then we'd do a review by the council in mid-February, and then hopefully have the approval of the purchase agreement and development agreement a month later in March. So certainly that's kind of the one action item. We don't need a formal action on it, but certainly that's a next step that we'll be taking forward if that's the EDA's direction. And then the last update I have is for the former Moose Lodge. Couple updates on what we've been working out on this site. First, we have met with the Department of Employment and Economic Development about their redevelopment programs, their brownfield development programs that they offer throughout the state. And they have a redevelopment loan program that I think this site would be very competitive in. And essentially how the loan works is it covers the upfront cost of demolition. So what we've talked about this before, that the building's really in rough shape and being a blight on the neighborhood. We could use this funding to actually cover as a loan, the cost of demolishing the building and the parking lots and restoring the site. And then if redevelopment occurs within a certain time period, that loan actually becomes forgivable. And so the city wouldn't have to repay that loan, because the project would contribute to the tax base, which is one of the goals of DEED. And so that redevelopment loan application is due in mid 2022. We've also been meeting with the broker community. One unique aspect of this site is that there are the two privately owned properties immediately adjacent. And we know there have been past discussions between the city and those property owners. We know there have been past discussions with developers that have looked at the Moose Lodge property and those property owners. But late last year, we had some conversations with brokers that have had direct conversations with both of those property owners. This is the other site that Beacon Interfaith is interested in developing, and we've had conversations on that. But because of the scale of the projects they do, it's likely it wouldn't be the entire property. So there would need to be some sort of phasing occurred where the details would need to be worked out, but they'd purchase part of the property for the development, and then there'd be some land remaining for a future phase of housing or mixed use development on that site. So the next steps on this is we'll start working on the loan application for DEED that will require a resolution of support from the council. And so we would certainly bring that to you before we submit that application. And then we are going to continue in early this year the discussions directly with those adjacent property owners to see about the potential sale of those properties and acquisition for redevelopment. So those are my updates for where we're at with kind of the three active developments or potential developments, and the fourth site that we've been working on, given that the city owns it, and we know it's one of the higher priority sites in the neighborhood. So with that, President, happy to answer any questions or take any feedback EDA may have.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Let's, I've generated all kinds of notes here for questions, but let's go in order. Commissioner Cave, you have questions for Mr. Thompson?
I do. Thank you. Mr. Thompson, one question, I think we'll go backwards because it's first in my mind. With the Gladstone property, if we were able to get a redevelopment loan, could they start that demolition before spring? Is that something that can be started like sooner than later on that property?
Commissioner Cave, it's not. It can't happen before the actual application happens. So. Okay. My misunderstanding. I thought we were applying for it soon, so they would let you know sooner than later. And. Oh, sure. No, it's a application process, or the applications are due in July of this year.
Oh, okay. You know what? It's right in front of me, and I didn't even see that. Okay, I'm sorry, Jeff. I think the property, the C property that you were talking about with going back to the solicitation of offers is a fantastic idea. I think that's great. The property with the marina, one question on that. When can we suppose a hearing is going to take place? Do we have a timeline or a, is it going to be within 6 months, 3 months, so we know what's happening there?
Thanks for the question. I expect the hearing process for a development application and if there is a tax increment application, any public hearing on that would likely occur kind of in the 5 to 6 month time period. And that's actually for either project, just given that
Okay.
they're working towards the November end of the year closing date. That would generally be the time frame for the hearings on that.
Okay, and just one more question. The Hmong Funeral Home, and I don't know if you have an answer for this one, but why do you think so many times when properties around this area, even the C area that we were talking about, why were the tax credits applications denied? Do they give you a reason, or is it they just didn't get accepted?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Minnesota Housing it's all done by scoring. So it's all done by points that they get for the various criteria within the tax credit.
Okay.
And so that's how the decision is made. It's strictly based on scores. And what changes each year is the pool of other applications. Sometimes some projects reapply every year, some projects move on to something else. And so developers really never know what the full pool and who they're going to be competing with against and how they'll score against. It is, unfortunately, it's really not uncommon. I mentioned this site's gone through the 3 years of tax credits. That's not uncommon, actually. It's the allocation that happens from the federal government on tax credits is so limited, and the pool is usually so deep. It's a fairly small percentage of projects that get funded. And so there's a lot of developers that are really committed to doing affordable housing, and they will, tweak their application based on how they scored and try to improve it and keep going after them year after year. So it's actually not a unique thing throughout the state of Minnesota.
Okay, interesting. And it seems like a lot of these, the Gladstone property, everybody's going for it.
Yes.
So we have,
I think that's driven a lot by the high geographic score that the neighborhood gets, because that's consistent for the entire neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Jeff. That's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Villavicencio, do you have questions for Mr. Thompson?
Yes, thank you, President Knudsen. My question was along the lines of Commissioner Cave. I guess I was just trying to figure out a little bit more about that tax credit process. And obviously, because there's such a huge demand in housing right now in our whole area, are there any things that we can do as a city to ensure that maybe our projects get more of those tax credits?
Yeah, good question. In terms of the one thing that we have the most important tool that we have the most control over is tax increment. So supporting the projects through potential use of tax increment financing, which the city can do if it's a qualifying project. And that's important because it shows the commitment of the city and the council to the project, but it also really helps in the financial scoring of the financial feasibility of the project. And so those are two specific things the city can do, and it's two things the city has done on each of these projects, is submitted resolutions of support for the projects. I know the mayor has drafted letters of support for each of the projects to Minnesota Housing, and then we've done some preliminary resolutions of support for the use of tax increment for the project. So we've taken those actions. The things we control, we've done to help those developers move forward. The other thing I would offer is, I think as more information comes out about Ramsey County's HRA programs, that's going to be a really important funding source for us to partner with the county to leverage those new funds to also support these projects moving forward in Maplewood, and having sure that